All right, the first of these major arguments is referred to as the cosmological argument. You will also hear it referred to as the Kalam argument because it was a mainstay in early Islamic philosophy. And the Kalam, the term Kalam, has to do with the concept of the cosmos, the origins of the cosmos. So, and that's exactly what the cosmological argument is about. It's a question of how exactly did something come from nothing. And as we're going to see, this is a compelling argument. We really have to wrestle seriously with it simply because, as of yet, nobody knows how something came from nothing. And if we're struggling with the question of the origin of the cosmos, we have to think seriously about the nature of what is the cosmos, and is it possible for a material reality to simply appear on its own, or for a material reality to be the cause of itself? So, but to begin, this, as we're going to see, this is a deductive argument that it's going to be making an argument or making a case, a conclusion that if the premises are true, then the conclusion has to be true. And so let's walk through this argument and see what you think about this argument, if you think there's any weaknesses in the premises. And if there are no weaknesses in the premises, well, then we're going to be forced to accept the conclusion. So, but if there are weaknesses to the premises, well, then we're not necessarily forced to accept the conclusion. So the idea is this: is an argument based on the scientific reality of cause and effect. And we stop right there. Anything that exists is a result, is the effect of a prior cause. And so we're thinking just basic biology, material reality, physics, etc. That the nature of this this thing that we inhabit, the material world, the universe, etc., being biological organisms, everything that we are, is based in cause and effect. And it's one thing to say that here you and I just think about progeny, for example. So my wife and I have kids, and they're theoretically going to have kids, and my wife and I caused our kids, and they're going to cause their kids, and et cetera, et cetera. If there's some sort of burst of energy, it's going to have an effect, which will have an effect. If yesterday at the beach in Galveston, there was a bunch of lightning, and then it produces thunder, and then, in other words, there's always cause and effect going on. And going forward in time, if there's a cause that causes an effect, and then that effect becomes the cause of another effect, and then that cause becomes, or that effect becomes the cause of another effect, etc. Going forward in time, that makes perfect sense, and there's no problem with that at all. The real problem is going backwards in time. If this is an effect, which is which comes from a prior cause, but that cause is the effect of a prior cause, how far back in time can you go before at some point you just have to say, whoa, time out? What we're going to need is something that is the first cause. So this is a cause and effect argument which addresses the problem of infinite regress. And what we mean by this is cause and effect can go forward in time indefinitely with no problem. It cannot go infinitely backwards in time without a problem. At some point, you're going to have to extend cause and effect back in time and space until you hit something, whatever it is, that we're going to have to call the uncaused cause. So again, it's a cause and effect argument. It addresses the problem of infinite regress, meaning at some point there's going to have to be a cause that leads to an effect, which becomes a cause which leads to an effect, etc., going forward in time, which is uncaused. And what we mean by this is whatever this is, it is necessary. It's self-existent. It requires no explanation, as opposed to everything else that happens from here. Every cause leading to an effect, which becomes a cause leading to an effect, everything else is contingent. And what that means is to be a contingent being, for example, you and I as human beings, to be contingent beings, we rely on so many things for our existence. Our existence is highly contingent. Without oxygen, without food and water and so many other things, we either would never come to be, or we would cease to be once we have come into existence. There's so many things on which we rely for our existence. That's what it is to be contingent. If the uncaused cause theory is true, and at some point it kind of has to be, it would appear that there has to be something that is the first source of all cause and effect, that itself is not the result of cause and effect. And this is why often when it comes to this argument, somebody will say, well, what caused God? Well, that's the whole point. If God, whatever God is, if God was caused by something, well, then that's not God. because it's contingent. It's based on cause and effect. We're trying to reason towards that which is not contingent, that which is necessary, self-existent, whatever that is. That's what we're calling God. And you'll notice how kind of undefined this is. It isn't like we can, assuming that there is a thing called God that is the necessary, self-existent, uncaused cause of all things. There's not a whole lot we can know about this God, this mind, this power, whatever term we're going to use. Really, all we can know is that this mind, this power, etc., this being, whatever term we're using, apparently is sufficiently powerful enough to be the uncaused cause, sufficiently knowledgeable enough to set cause and effect into motion, but that's pretty much all there is to know. There's no other attribute of this first cause that's a necessary characteristic of the uncaused cause. There could be other things, peace and love and all those things could be, but we have no reason to argue that because it's not necessary to the argument. Regardless, what we're saying here is that if cause and effect is a thing, and it is, and no cause is the cause of itself, at some point there's going to have to be an uncaused cause, which becomes the cause of the first series of cause and effect. So here's how we put it as a deductive argument. No material, the major premise, no material reality is the cause of itself. So we stop right there. Well, as far as we know, that's true. That material reality does not cause itself. If we have evidence to the contrary, well, we can debate that premise and we don't have to keep going. But if we think that premise is true, well, then we got to keep going. Okay, well, what that means is the universe is a material reality. So, of everything in the world, anything in existence that is a cause of itself, there is a material reality is not that. Okay, I had to stop there and make an edit because I realized I left out a key word here. This circle represents everything that is not the cause of itself. And if we're saying that there are things that are not the cause of itself, well, one of the things we're saying, at least one of the things that's not the cause of itself, is material reality. And if the universe is part of material reality, and material reality is part of that which is not a cause of itself, well, then the universe cannot be the cause of itself. So you notice how this works in terms of the premises. If it is the case that no material reality can cause itself, in other words, it can't just spontaneously appear. Matter doesn't create itself. Energy doesn't create itself. It has to come from a source. And if it's true that material reality, which cannot be the cause of itself, contains, among other things, theoretically, the universe, well, then the universe is not the cause of itself. And so what we're positing here, according to the cosmological argument, is there would have to be something outside of this material reality, and therefore outside of this category of not the cause of itself, that then can explain the cause of that which is not a cause of itself. So if we were to say, well, what if God is just part of material reality? Well, according to this argument, we have a problem. And that is that, well, if God is part of material reality, then God cannot cause itself. Therefore, God itself needs an explanation, because all of material reality needs an explanation. If God is part of that, God also is not necessary. God is contingent. We're arguing there has to be something outside here that's necessarily existent to then be the cause of that which cannot cause itself, which, among other things, is the universe and everything that is contained within. So now we go to the second question on the guided thinking activity. What do you think about this argument? Do you think that the premises are true, therefore the conclusion has to be accepted? Is there any way around this argument, do you think? Whatever thoughts you have, write them down, and then let's go on to the next screencast.